back everyone to Legend Chess. Today we're exploring 7 basic opening principles that every beginner must know. The first principle is controlling the center. These central squares are crucial for having a good and solid principled chess game. Now, when we control these central squares, our pieces actually have more activity than if they controlled these squares on the side of the board. So for example, had I, instead of developing my d4 and e4, let's say I developed my h-pawn to h4. Well, now my h-pawn is only controlling this one square. While when I bring my d and e pawns out, which are generally the first 2 opening moves you're going to see, is either d4 or e4 for your first move. These are controlling all 4 of these central squares, trying to block off any of the piece development of the opposing team and permitting you to have higher development as well. Which brings us to our second basic opening principle. This principle is develop your pieces early. So I can start bringing all of my pieces out, right? Start developing my knight and my bishop, bring my other bishop out, I can bring my other knight out, and look at all these squares that all my pieces are controlling. These bishops are controlling these massive diagonals, attacking the weak f7 square. My knights are ready to jump into the battle. They're protecting the pawns. They're doing a wonderful job. And now that I've developed my pieces, my king is actually able to do the third principle, which is castling early. Now, castling is a very basic idea in chess. It's a great way to do 2 moves in 1. Now, the idea of castling is to get your king to safety as quickly as possible. So if I wanted to move my king out of these opening squares, assuming my king has not made any previous moves, neither has the rook that he's castling with, and there are no pieces of the opponent's side that are attacking your king, putting him in check, or that would put him in check over any of the squares that he would move over, right? The king will always move over 2 squares, whether it's on the right side or on the left side, right? Which we commonly refer to as short castling on the right side for white, or long castling, which would be putting it on the other side, the queen side. Now, the idea of castling is that you get your king out of the center, you develop your rook so that he's more easily available to get into the battle. So if we short castled here, now my rook is connected to my other rook, right? Which is my 4th principle, right? You want to connect your rooks and connect them early. Together, they work as great battering rams. These are the cannons of chess. They do such a good job. Now, before we get into bringing in all of our rooks and creating all these attacks, one of the main principles that I notice a lot of beginners really struggle with is moving the same piece multiple times. Now, there are situations where it's justified, but the general rule is I don't want to start out my development on the chessboard by moving the same piece 1,000 times. Because if I, for example, started out with 1 e4, he brings his pawn out, and I say, oh, well, I'm going to bring my knight out and attack his pawn. He has to defend it. He brings his knight out to defend his pawn. And now I just want to, let's say, I'm just going to block this bishop in, which is just not necessarily great practice, because now this bishop can't go past this pawn. The only move that he can do is come up here. And now I'm like, oh, well, I want to bring my knight out. He's going to develop more pieces, and all that's going to happen is he will get way quicker development and develop amazing attacks against me because I've only moved the same piece multiple times, right? So he brings out his pieces, and now he's already ready to castle. Well, all I've done is block my pieces in and put my knight on a poor square. So we want to make sure that in the opening we don't do bad principles. We always want to move our pieces just 1 time in the first few moves of the game. Now that brings us to the next opening principle. So let's assume we've brought all of our pieces out. We're attacking, they don't always have to be on these exact same squares. This is just the general idea of it. And then I castle. Now my rooks are ready to go into the battle. We're going to go on to our next principle, which is to play with a plan. Now, playing with a plan is important. It doesn't mean you have to have 8 moves ready down the road that you've calculated and you know every variation of what they're going to do. Because if that's the case, you're never going to make a single move, or you're going to blunder by overthinking way too much. The general idea is, early on, if you see a move, try to make sure you're not blundering a piece in one move. And remember, don't bring your queen out too early. That's another one of these main chess principles. If I'm bringing my queen out, it's so easily attacked. Okay? He's able to develop his pieces and attack my queen. The queen is so vulnerable to every other piece that you want to play very carefully with the queen. While it is a great attacking piece, make sure it's not your first attacking piece. Right? One queen is worth, generally speaking, 9 points of material, is how we calculate it in chess. While all of the other pieces, for example, the knights and bishops are worth 3, and the rooks are worth 5, and the pawns are worth 1. So if I'm bringing my queen out, and I'm just trying to attack and get some sort of quick checkmate, what's really going to happen is my queen's going to be in trouble. I'm not going to be able to develop my pieces very quickly, and I just might lose my best piece, because my whole army is still sitting on the back rank, not doing anything.